Right. Well, moving on to to a topic that's quite close to your heart, which is constitutional reform.
Yep.
This is not one of my areas of expertise, so I shall hand it over to you, Andrew.
Right. And one of the first organisations before I joined any political party was I became a member of the Electoral Reform Society. At the age of I was 17 years old as a student, I just looked at the system that we were living under, first past the post. And as a 17-year-old, I thought, this is nuts. This is crazy. Where whoever actually gets the most votes in a constituency returns the MP. We've now got to a situation that probably 28 to 30% of the people have voted for the incumbent MP, which means that the other 70% of the people who actually voted, and we're now getting to local elections dropping down to 50%. When we had the Brexit referendum, that was probably the highest turnout we'd had because the vote counted.
Yes.
Whereas what you're actually saying to 70% of the people who vote in parliamentary elections and people who vote in local elections, it's a safe seat. Your vote don't count. Don't bother. Carry on watching Coronation Street. Carry on watching, Man Alive or whatever you want to watch on TV or a cooking program. It's not going to change anything. It'll still carry on being the same. The Copeland seat, that's the first time that's actually changed hands since 1935. That's nearly 100 years. What? Are they actually saying that the people of Copeland have been universally socialist for nearly 90 years? That's crazy. And that's tribalism, which is wrong. So, campaign for electoral reform, probably, I can't remember the date when it's founded, I think it was probably in the 1860s. It's been going for quite some time. It's not been the most successful of organisations, but there are petitions now to actually get us over to proportional representation. And we've actually got, I don't know how many people live in Scotland. 8 million, 6 million, I don't know, something like that. But they've returned 52 seats.
Yes.
4 million people voted for UKIP.
Yeah.
And they got one seat.
Yeah,
how does this work?
Well, this is what the Lib Dems found. They hit this very dangerous lower than 25% threshold, didn't they, in the polls, essentially, and in what voters actually did. And then their seat numbers went down from, 52 or something to 8. The only issue I would take with proportional representation is the ability to get rid of a particular MP, like Vince Cable or Ed Balls, something like that.
Let's not go there anywhere near Vince Cable. At the end of the day, it works on a list system.
Yes.
And the easiest way to do that is you have a recall system, which has always been in place with PR. That if somebody is, blatantly fleecing or utterly incompetent, like probably some of the people that you've just mentioned and one in particular, you do have the right to on a petition of 100,000 people, if somebody's been obviously fleecing the state, fleecing the job, or not even bothering to turn up to sittings in the House or look after the imposition, I can't remember what the proposal is. It might be 100,000, it might be as low as 25,000. If you can get 25,000 people to actually sign a petition saying this guy's got to go, you can actually force Parliament to actually rescind his right to actually sit there.
Well, that sounds
it's all checks and balances. The one thing that we've not got in this country is checks and balances. The Americans achieved that when probably all the radicals that felt themselves displaced when we foolishly had made the first 1660, when we had the Restoration, is a lot of the people who fought for the good old cause just upped and left and went to America. The Washingtons, Franklins, all families from the Midlands just went because there was no political future for them. So they actually could see all these constitutional problems, which were, and Jefferson quite rightly, very cleverly put checks and balances into the American Constitution. I know you're gagging to actually ask me about Trump and everything else.
I'm not going to ask you about
Trump.
But
the one thing there is the fact that these checks and balances have actually been transposed. So he is not a king.
No.
Whereas we do have a king in this country, and he's not necessarily the elected Prime Minister, or she is the elected Prime Minister. We have a situation where we have the roles of Cabinet Secretary and Head of the Civil Service have been merged very discreetly into one role, into one person. So Jeremy Hayward, who sits at the sits on the right hand of the Prime Minister in Cabinet, And I can assure you that if he doesn't like something going forward into Parliament, it won't get enacted by the civil service. And we've had a number of people who were advisors to the Conservative government under Cameron who just got into loggerheads with him and just upped and left. And I think you're probably knowing who the chap I'm actually talking about, who wrote Being Human, whose name escaped me. Steve Hilton. I mean, he just couldn't take it anymore because this guy was just a roadblock. Now, constitutionally, we've got to have checks and balances about people who are actually effectively running the country, who are not elected, who are answerable only to God and the Queen, and to a few of their friends that they were probably at school with going back 60 years. We need to move on. We need to have a written constitution. I know people say, oh, well, we've got a written constitution in America and everybody ignores it and everything else. But we've got to have a starting point. We're one of 4 countries that's not got a written constitution that protects the role of the individual. That is the reason why we've had to go back to the Supreme Court, and they were very reluctant to do it, to define where power lies. Power lies, and was established on the 14th of June 1645 at the Battle of Naseby, was quite simply, our constitution is 3 words. Parliament is sovereign, and that was fought at the point of a sword. We've now got a problem now is where 90% of the people in this country that actually believe that the people are sovereign. We voted for Brexit. And now you've got this raft of people now who are actually saying, no, you're not sovereign, only Parliament's sovereign. So if we want to actually put short people with no hair on a cattle truck somewhere and send them off to a camp, if those 600 people actually decide that's legal, that gets passed in Parliament, it's legal. That's wrong.
Absolutely. Talking about MPs and the number of MPs, would you like to see the amount of MPs reduced? And then that also leads probably onto the House of Lords.
House of Lords, abolish.
Yeah, right.
Complete anachronism. Yeah. No point to it at all.
No £300 a day for
no £103 a day for just keeping the taxi running outside, running in, signing your name, 300 quid in your pocket. That's an abuse. There's no point. It's a rest home.
Do you not accept the argument
it's a rest home for the... No, there's no checks, man. It's a rest... The Parliament Act dealt with that years ago. Yeah. So at the end of the day, it's a home for the politically bewildered. So literally, you know, this country has a thing about, oh, I'll make you a lord. Oh, God. And literally, I'm a lord. I can wear ermine. I can be called Lord this, that, and the other. And the amount of socialists who have actually gone through to say, oh, I'm not going to do this. I'm never going to become a lord. And there they are, sitting on the red leather seats. Just abolish it. We don't need it.
And in terms of the
850 people, £300 a day. Do your own maths.
Fair enough. And the MPs?
200. 200? Tops. Right. Sitting for 6 months. And the best way to keep them occupied and not passing any more stupid laws is every act should have a sunset clause. Every act. Right. That will keep them busy for months and months and months. So if they're having to regurgitate and check that hopefully we can actually have the amount of laws on the statute book going down and down and down.
I don't think there's enough time to read all the laws, are there, in this country?
What I'm banking on is these people who are narcissistic enough to actually want to sit in there, and that if they actually have to sit there and have to regurgitate over laws, they won't want to be there, and we'll get a better quality of MP who's actually has got vested. And there's been some superb MPs over the last 100, 200 years. Superb. But there's been an awful lot of dross. Yes. Huge amount of dross. And the worst thing, as far as I'm concerned, is Parliament is supposed to hold the executive to account. The invasion of Iraq with British troops on a lie was probably the most... It was just a travesty. I mean, I don't know what else to say. You know, everybody else is held to account in this country, apart from Parliament. There were times when impeachment for abusing the trust of the nation was a capital offence. I still believe it should be. They should be held to account.
Well, absolutely. And an English Parliament?
Absolutely.